Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Raw Life Health Show, and I hope you're all enjoying these interviews with people that are long-term raw fooders and just eating healthy and doing it the right way. And today we have a special guest. This is John Kohler. Say hello to the audience, John.
Hi, audience.
John's been started a raw vegan diet way back when. It's around the same time I did, and he's gonna tell about his story today. So, John, before we get started, tell everybody you were sick before you started eating a raw food diet, correct?
Well, I didn't have a sickness per se. I almost lost my life. That's kind of what got me into it. Almost like that was a major health scare, or actually these days I call it health opportunity, to basically turn my life around.
Yeah. So what was that? What happened to you that made you decide I got to do something different?
Yeah, so I had what's called spinal meningitis. So I was basically hospitalized in the hospital. The doctor said I might not make it out alive. And luckily I made it out alive because raw foods did not save me at that point. And I knew when I got out is that I asked the doctors, why did this happen? And they said, you basically have a weak immune system based on your genes. I didn't necessarily want to accept that, diagnosis. So I'm like, how can I turn around my immune system so it's stronger, so I'm more resilient in the future against other diseases? Because the doctor said that this time you're safe, but next time you get a disease, your immune system might not be able to fight it because it's like not that strong. And so I needed to find a way to make my immune system stronger. And that's basically got me into juicing, which then got me into colon cleansing, which then got me into living in raw foods diet.
Yeah. So how many years ago was all this?
I started back raw foods diet. My first 100% raw day was back in 1995, probably like mid 1995.
Okay. So when was the first time, do you remember way back then? Because I know you got a good memory because you're on a raw food diet. So do you remember back then, the first time in your life you heard the term raw food diet?
I think it might have been actually a few years before that, actually, because I met this guy named Samson. We were at the time I was going out with this girl named Lindsay, and we were at a Thanksgiving potluck for her family. And one of her family members, cousins or somebody, had this one family, like Samson was there and like his brother and his mom. And they ate only their special food that was off to one side. I mean, they had turkey and all the regular stuff. And then they were eating this special living raw food stuff. And that was like the first time I really heard about it. And I've always been inquisitive. I think that's one of the traits that I've had that has helped me become successful on a raw foods diet, asking lots of questions and trying to figure things out. But I asked him a lot of questions about, hey, why are you guys eating something different? Why aren't you guys eating turkey? Everybody eats turkey. It's normal and all this stuff. And, he explained to me about why raw foods and why living foods are good. And I mean, I'm like, all right, well, that sounds interesting, but I wasn't really interested. I didn't really need that message at that point, I guess. I tried their stuff for sure. I'm like, oh, this stuff tastes all right.
Was
But
that
it's
before or
like,
after you were sick?
Oh, before. That was like before. So I had heard about it before, right? And I just like, oh, this is like weird. These people are doing this. But I know there's like vegans out there, and this is kind of like more extreme veganism stuff. And it's cool, I'll try it, but I'm still eating my regular stuff. And guess what happened to me? And then later, I never really connected the dots until like way later when I saw Samson later. And, now he watches my videos and learns a lot of stuff from me, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you ever saw him later on, but you did. So that's cool.
Yeah.
So after you got sick, what happened then? You decided you're not going to accept what the doctors were going to tell you. And I know you got into juicing, right?
Yeah, so I saw an infomercial on TV. Jay Cordich, the juice man, I ordered his juicer off the infomercial, which is the short story. The long story is tried to get one at Walmart and it didn't work, and I had to return it and had to get the right juicer. And I mean, nowadays I sell the right juicer for people that will last a long time. So yeah, I got into juicing, which is my first step into the door in raw foods, because when you make fresh juice, that's living in raw foods, because you're not heat processing it. You could drink it and you're increasing your hopefully vegetable and leafy green consumption specifically. I'll be the first one to say that I'm not a fan of people drinking, too much fruit juice. I think fruits are better eaten or vacuum blended best, but definitely everybody needs to increase their vegetable consumption. And juicing is an excellent way to do that. So yeah, I got into juicing, which was my first foray. Back then, I would juice a lot of carrots and like parsnips.
Sure. And then when did you actually, so after that, you heard about the raw foods. Did you make your raw food recipe or did you go to a restaurant? When did you first taste a raw food recipe?
So I think that probably was my like day in 1995. So basically, I was juicing early 95 for about 6 months. I found a book, Cleanse and Purify Thyself by Dr. Richard Anderson. He talks about psyllium, bentonite, herbal chomper, cleansing your colon, getting colonics, which I found a local colonic practitioner. And then had a lot of amazing results from that. And then I went down, luckily there's a raw food restaurant, about an hour from my house in San Francisco, is Giuliano's Raw in San Francisco. And so I went there to finish up my first 100% raw day as a celebration.
Yes, that's wonderful. And I know right now you're very much into growing your own food and you have a wonderful YouTube channel called Growing Your Greens. So juicing became a passion of yours and you opened up a wonderful website and a YouTube channel called Discount Juicers, which is excellent. I highly recommend that. Anyone wanted a juice, check that out. I'll put the links below the video. And you also have Growing Your Greens, which is a wonderful channel about growing your own food. And then you have OK Raw, about raw food. So there's 3 of your passions in life that you've discovered, that you've turned into a hobby, into a way of living, and you're teaching others pretty much these 3 things in your life: raw food, growing your food, and how to get the best juicer for each person, correct?
Yes, and other health appliances. I don't just try to limit to juicers. Vacuum blenders are very important, as you have discovered, as well as other appliances that may allow people to eat more fruits and vegetables. I'll be having a cool spiralizer here pretty soon and a few other knickknacks. But, my goal and message is to just get people to eat more plant foods and foods that you process or maybe even grow yourself. It's so important to just try to, move away from the industrial system of buying pre-made food. If you guys are eating packaged and, prepared foods, or even the industrial system that grows food that most people accept and eat. I know you are also really big into growing. You grow a lot more fruit trees than I ever do, Paul, but I grow a lot more vegetables than you do. And they're all important, right? Whatever's easiest for people to grow. I want people to take some responsibility for the food you eat by growing it and processing it in the best ways possible. And that's what I do with my life. And I try to share that with people to make the world a better place because, like you, Paul, when I got sick, and there was no internet back in the day when we went raw at first, so it was harder to find information. And then it was hard to find good information. So I'm glad to be alive. And part of my life is that I live in service. And the service that I do is I try to give back to people and share everything I know for free without charging anybody in my videos so that they could have access to this very important information that, the governments and you're not learning in, grade school or even high school or even college for that matter.
Yes. And one of the things you've done too is you love to travel. And I know first you did it more just like you wanted to see places, but then as you got into growing your own food and meeting other raw fooders, you actually started interviewing people that had farms all over the world and not just big farms, even people doing it personally in their backyard. I always thought you should start a travel channel because that's also been one of your passions. And one of your great things is never limiting yourself, how to make these things happen. And you fly around the world for so cheap and inexpensive, and just looking for ways to make your dreams come true. So here you are eating a raw food diet for many years. You're growing your food and so on and creating these things. So what are some things you've learned over the years that maybe, there's a lot of people out there now that are doing this maybe 4 or 5 years and are excited and motivated. What are some things you want them to learn from your mistakes and some tips you want to share with people about just all diet, not even raw, but just healthy living?
I think we really want to, once again, Paul, get back to growing our own food as much as you can. And even if you don't have space or a backyard or a front yard to grow food in, grow some sprouts inside. They're super simple, super easy. And I want you guys to process your own food and don't accept things, that you could buy at a restaurant or pre-made foods or packaged foods. If you just do that alone, if you make your own food, even if you have to buy bulk fruits and vegetables and cut them up into salads instead of buying a pre-made salad, that's still infinitely better than when somebody else makes it for you and you can't control the ingredients, for example, that go in the salad dressing. Or if you want to, cook some food, buy the food or grow the food, then heat process it yourself. I only recommend, cooking in water. So steaming, boiling, or pressure cooking are the only methods of heat cooking that I recommend. I think all the other methods of cooking could be quite detrimental, personally.
Yeah. So what do you suggest if somebody wants to get into eating a healthier diet and lifestyle? What recommendations would you make for them? I'm not talking about people that already have an illness, because I know it's specific based on what's going on in their lives, but people that have not been diagnosed with the disease, they just want to eat healthier. What would be some of the first things you'd suggest for them to do?
I mean, the number one, that's the easiest thing, honestly. I mean, I sell juices for a living, and I'll be the first to tell people that juicing was the first thing that how it got me into eating healthier and raw foods, because it was my first step. Because I started juicing and then I started feeling better, and I'm like, hey, what else can I do? Juicing is very easy, especially if you don't have a good digestive system. It breaks the fiber open to reveal the nutrients, keep some of the fiber depending on what you're juicing, but it makes it a lot more easy to absorb and faster to absorb for you. And also it allows you to increase the quantity of vegetables specifically you guys could eat. So I drank like a quart of green juice today, and that's like 4 pounds of produce in 1 quart of juice, that I drank. So it just makes it easier. And I think my main message for a lot of people are just eat more vegetables. Fruits are easy to eat, right? People love blending fruits into smoothies. Hopefully you're vacuum blending. They love eating fruits because they're so sweet, but people really just fail to eat enough vegetables, especially the leafy green vegetables that are so critical for our health.
Yeah. So you said juicing was very simple, but I don't think people see that the same way, because they're not doing it like it's simple to us because we've been doing it for a long time. But I see a lot of people having a challenge with juicing. So you and I know that it's not time consuming and it's okay, but I meet people that they literally think it's the hardest task in the world, and they might have done it one time and it took them a really long time to clean the juicer, and they get discouraged and so on. As easy as it is, it's not as easy as just popping something and put it in a microwave oven. We know we don't recommend that. We know it's much healthier to juice than a microwave oven. But you say it's easy, but there might be people that are watching that says, even people that are experienced at eating a healthy diet say, no, juicing is not easy. It takes time and it's hard and difficult. So what would you recommend to people that have that experience?
So, I mean, I think it depends on the specific person and what part of the juicing process is not easy. Actually, I should have a video on this actually to make juicing easier, because I have solutions for everybody. I mean, advancements in juicing technology makes juicing more easy. The all new NAMA J2 juicer is the juicer I use most, because I'm done with pushing produce into the juicer. This machine, it's easy as using a coffee maker almost. You literally, like a Keurig coffee maker, you just take that little pod, you put it in there, you fill up your water, you put the pod in, you shut the lid, you plug it in, you turn it on, and it makes your coffee, right? Well, this juicer's almost as simple as that. You literally just open the lid of the juicer, you could dump all your produce in there, shut the lid, turn it on, walk away, you come back 3 minutes later, you could have 24 ounces or 32 ounces of juice without you doing nothing. You don't have to push stuff in, you don't have to do nothing. And then all you got to do at the end is clean the juicer. And yes, you would have to clean your Keurig after that, and maybe it's a bit easier to clean a Keurig than a juicer, I'll say that. And then you could clean the juicer for a couple, 4 to 7 minutes, it takes to clean the J2, and you have a juice. You could buy pre-made produce or pre-washed produce, or like baby carrots are pre-washed. I would rather use whole carrots and wash them. But if you don't like scrubbing the produce before you juice it, get pre-washed baby carrots, dump pre-washed baby carrots in that hopper, shut the lid, turn on, walk away, come back to 24 ounces of juice, wash the juicer. A couple minutes later, you're done, and you got a thing of juice now you could drink. I think, to me, that's fairly easy. I mean, yeah, maybe a microwave's easier. Take something out of the freezer, put it in the microwave, hit the button, let it run, come back, and it's done. And then maybe, in the microwave, things might splatter. You might have to wipe down the thing, but I mean, that's definitely gonna be easier than the juicer. But a juicer will give you significantly more benefits than microwaving ever will, in my opinion.
Well, I didn't even know about that juicer. So that's interesting. So I'm going to put a link to that juicer below the video. I didn't even know about that juicer. That's amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
no, it's amazing. I mean, I'm not going to say it makes the highest yield. I mean, surely, Paul, that you have a Green Star makes a higher yield and the Green Star makes a higher quality juice. But you know what? You're giving up a little quality, you're giving up a little yield, but you're getting convenience. And if it's convenient and lets you do it, whereas before you wouldn't do it, that's a win. And I've been seeing sales like literally go through the roof on this Nana J2 because it does make it so easy. And more people are juicing because of it. And that's a win for everybody.
Wow. So as much as I love juicing, I want to talk about John and what you've been through. So how many years, because I know right now you're eating some heated food, but how many years were you on 100% raw vegan diet? Or as you
So
say, 99.9%.
thank you, Paul. So, I mean, I would say a good like 25 years approximately, maybe over the last 2, 3 years, I've been eating some heat processed foods,
Okay.
you know, in
So
small quantities.
we're going to get into why you started adding heat processed food in a few minutes. But for now, on those 20 something years you've been doing all raw, what were the challenges? What were the social challenges? What were the health challenges? What are things you changed? Something you might have did at the beginning that you switched off and you started doing different later on?
Yeah, that's a pretty big encompassing question. So, something I did earlier that I changed later on was, you know, I ate too many dried fruits and fruits in general at the beginning, thinking that if it's anything that's raw is healthy, like, oh, date paste and nut butter are raw, so I could eat that, and I'm still a raw foodist and it's healthy. Well, you know, maybe some steamed vegetables might be healthier than overeating dates and nut butter, you know, in my opinion now. And I'd rather actually, instead of eating dates and nut butter nowadays, I'd just rather steam an eggplant or something that I grew in my garden or something like that. You know, I think that's a lot healthier personally. So yeah, that's something. And then let's see. I mean, I really didn't have too many health challenges aside from just things that I had as a child. A lot of my health challenges as a child, I had asthma, eczema, you know, dry skin condition, allergies. A lot of those had gone away, you know, and I had a few to some small extents, but like nothing ever like super major happened to me as a you know, eating raw vegan food. Like I wasn't like feeling terrible or bad. I didn't have digestion issues, you know. But here's the thing about me, Paul, is I'm always trying to like, hey, what can I do to make this better? What can I do to make my diet better? As much as I'm eating a raw foods diet, which is you know, when I got into this, like the healthiest diet, it took me about 5, 10 years to like realize that, hey, if I grow my own food and have higher quality food, then actually I'm making my diet better, even though I'm not necessarily changing what I'm eating, but I'm changing the quality of what I'm eating. You know, I learned about processing your food in different ways using slow juicing, vacuum blending instead of high speed juicing, and traditional blending that introduces a lot of air into the juice. And that's an incremental marginal improvement, you know, so that I'm improving my diet. And it's just like all these little things like this have allowed me to excel, you know, like by the inch it's a cinch, by the yard it's hard is a saying that I heard from another raw food teacher way back in the day, you know, that I think today, you know, I'm just making these small improvements little by little, and then it adds up into being a lot.
One of the challenges I see people having, and the reason why they get away from the raw food diet, is socially they just find it too difficult to do. Over the years, have you run into situations socially that made it more challenging, or was that never an issue for you?
So I'm not going to say I'm not the most social person, Paul. I'm pretty much kind of like an introvert and stuff, despite my YouTube persona. Because when I'm making YouTube videos, I'm talking to the camera, not like a whole crowd. I have talked to crowds and I'm fine in social situations, but I've never really been one to eat out. You know, there's not a lot of raw food restaurants to eat out at. When I find one, I'll go to one and make a video review for you guys because I like to have fun and enjoy life sometimes. But otherwise, I don't eat out. You know, I don't have a whole big circle of friends that I hang out with. I stopped drinking at 21, so I never really went out to bars. You know, I stopped eating junk food pretty much 21 also by that time. So like, I never really went out there. So like, the social impacts for me in my life was minimal. Maybe going to like family events and Thanksgiving and all this stuff. In the first couple of years, I'd badger people for eating dead animal carcasses at Thanksgiving, which was not the right approach to take. You know, but I've learned how to have proper social etiquette and do what I need to do. And I think the thing for me, Paul, is that for a lot of people that get sick and have an illness, right, we have a big carrot and stick over our head. You know, I'd rather not fit in socially and be alive and eat healthfully than to like, oh, I'm just going to eat this junky food to fit in. Because for me, my health, I value my health more than like anything in life, because I've learned from a young age when I almost lost my health, almost lost my life, that if without your health, you're nothing. So like I will put my health first. And you know, if people think I'm gonna be weird or not accept stuff, or I went to Spain one time visiting it was my girlfriend at the time, her grandma, and she was shoving like bread in my face, and I'm like, get that off my face. And maybe I offended her by not eating her food that she was giving me, but like I didn't care, because it's more important for my health than to just eat some bread that she's shoving in my face. I don't know.
Sure. So you've mentioned several girlfriends. What is your current relationship status?
Yeah. So currently I'm single, Paul.
Okay. So over the years that you've been doing this as a single person, do you think you would have had more social challenges if you were married?
So it depends if I was married before or after being raw. If I was married before and just went out of the conventional person, I have no doubt in my mind that it would be quite challenging to go out with somebody that didn't understand what I'm doing. As somebody who is single and a raw vegan these days, I will say that dating is challenging because there's minimum standards that I will accept. I'm not going to go out with somebody that eats fast food and junk food or doesn't respect me and my diet. And for me, it's important because I want to have children one of these days. I know you have, some kids, but like for me, it's really important that the girl wants to have children also and eat healthfully, because, the health of the mom and the health of the dad will be the health of the kids, and the future generation. So, yeah, it's difficult dating in the world as it is, being, somebody that, as long as I've been doing this, it's still quite different compared to a normal society.
Okay. So for everyone that's watching, my question to you is, are you currently looking for a raw vegan partner, or could you be just a vegetarian? Is vegan good enough? Like, what is your standard?
That's a good question, Paul. So yeah, I've thought about this a long time. And when I was younger, maybe I'd only go out with another raw vegan, and maybe even like a whole food plant-based vegan. But I've kind of like mellowed out a little bit. So my standard nowadays is that, they have to be into and value their health above all else. Because if they value their health, they're probably going to find what I found to be true is that if you value your health, you have to adopt a whole food plant-based diet as the majority of your diet, and hopefully minimally process your foods. So, and if they eat a little bit of animal products, I'm not going to like ditch them. But, then at that point, then we'd have to figure out that and figure out how to source the best quality. But hopefully I'd be able to, get them to eat, more minimally processed plant foods. But if they want to eat fish or whatever they need to eat because they think it's healthy, I'm going to let them know the alternatives. But I'm not going to try to change them, because, trying to change somebody is not a good thing.
Well, it's good that you gotten away from kind of like labels, because I think somebody who's health minded but eating a little animal products can be much more better shape than a junk food, raw food vegan.
Absolutely.
So it's very wise. So I like the health minded idea of that. Well, ladies, listen up. John's available here and looking for a health minded person. So that's great. So then after you're doing this for a long time now, did you monitor your blood test over the years? How did you know what you was doing was working for you, other than how you felt?
Yeah, so doing traditional blood tests was good. I went to Dr. Shendell on your recommendation one time to kind of get some advanced blood testing to see what's going on. I mean, blood tests are, I think, one component of your health for sure that should be taken into consideration, but our bodies are basically self-balancing systems, and we'll self-balance our blood and do other things to make that happen. So, I mean, that's a good baseline, but I think you should go further. I mean, when I and you got into this, Paul, they didn't have any such test as microbiome testing. And actually, that's more of a recent thing that you could now do. And I recently did a microbiome test, and when I looked at my microbiome test results, I thought to myself, wow, I wish I had this 26 years ago when I started, to see my baseline microbiome and see how my microbiome has shifted over all the years eating raw vegan. I rarely get stomach aches. I mean, I used to get stomach aches all the time. I don't get constipated. Some days before I was raw vegan, I would, sit on the toilet and squeeze. And now you know how it is. You just go in, do your business, you come out. You're almost like you're faster than somebody going pee, like literally, when you're going number two, because it just flows out pretty easy. But So now I'm checking my microbiome and I'm like, wow, my microbiome test is not where I would think it would be eating this perfect diet for humans, this raw vegan diet. So now it's making me think a bit more, and that's one of the reasons why I started implementing and including some more heat process, foods to create a greater diversity of the foods I am eating.
Okay, so that's where I want to get to next. So within the last couple of years, you started to eat some more heat-based products into your diet. Now, when we say heat-based, are you talking about cooked food? Because you did mention steaming, some steaming foods. And so what are we talking about? What switched that you've been doing 100% raw vegan? And even one time when I was eating cooked food, I mentioned, I used to tell people it's much better to eat steamed vegetables if it's freezing outside in Alaska or somewhere in Minnesota than to eat a raw food candy bar just to call yourself a raw food vegan. And you actually interviewed me and you were like, okay, that's where he's at and blah, blah, blah. So what did it for you to make you realize that? Did you just want to go, like you said, just to cover all the bases, or was it something, one specific thing that made you decide, I'm going to expand, just going beyond just raw vegan and maybe consider eating some heat-based foods?
Yeah, Paul, I think there's three main considerations that I had that pushed me towards eating heat processed foods. So let me define heat processed foods, because people just think cooked. All cooked food is bad. And, in a lot of things in life, you just can't categorize things as good or bad. There's always like these gray areas. So I would say, when I say heat processed foods, that means I'm using an instant pot. That's the only way I heat process foods. My stove is not connected, and just for storage, actually. So I don't put things in the oven. I don't use a microwave. I don't fry things. I don't air fry things. I only use the instant pot. And generally in the instant pot, I use things in the pressure cooking method. So I steam things in the pressure cooker. So for example, I put in eggplants, some broccoli, and okra yesterday that I grew, and I did it for 0 minutes in there. So it got up to temperature, steamed a little bit, then it shut off, and then I got the food and I ate it, right? So it breaks down some of the fibers, kills the enzymes. Yes, it does kill enzymes, but it can break open fibers and make some of the phytonutrients more available, some of the antioxidants actually. Whereas dehydration all the enzyme activity could brown your food and kill more of the phytonutrients, but keep the enzymes. So what people don't understand is that every way you process food, whether you're blending it in traditional Vitamix, injecting a lot of air, you're losing phytochemicals, and steaming, you may be, getting greater access to them because you're breaking open cell walls and killing the enzymes that can degrade some of the phytonutrients, which is totally crazy, totally insane, because it's taught in raw foods. When you heat something, you're always losing. And it's hard to justify that when I see so much science, that says something to the contrary. So I only heat process things in the instant pot, whether it's steamed or just, cooked in water. You could say boiled. I don't really boil things, or, pressure cooked. So the temperature never goes above 212 if I'm boiling or steaming, or never above like 248 if I'm pressure cooking, because the pressure gets a little bit hotter, than just alone. And then the other thing is, I only do whole vegetables generally, and just steam them, and then I eat them plain. I'm not saucing them. I'm not using ketchup. I'm not using mustard. I don't go out to raw vegan places and eat crap. Like, I have a very specific method that I need to do to my food if I will be eating it, if it's good enough and meets my standards. Because if you keep processed food the wrong way, you create carcinogens and you add toxins to food when you're adding different kinds of sauces and all kinds of things to it. And then now you're changing the flavor of the food, so it may make it more addictive, like adding salt to potatoes. Like, I don't do that. I just eat plain potatoes. And yes, I do purple potatoes, which are high in anthocyanins. And actually, I'd rather heat process purple potatoes and eat, some bananas, for example, because they're a lot more nutritious in my book. Plus, they got the resistant starch in there as well. So the three main reasons why I started eating heat processed foods: number one, blood sugar regulation, triglyceride levels. I had some challenges, and this is not something that just happened once, but I saw a pattern over several years of blood tests where my cholesterol was a bit higher than where I would like it, as well as my triglyceride levels. I've always tried to cut back on fruit, but it's hard when you're getting your calories from a fruit-based diet. So I'm like, how can I do this? So then I made the switch to kind of getting my calories more from vegetables, and then I want to cut down my fruit even more and eat more vegetables. And the only way I could do that easily is to heat process some foods that condense the food. So now you could actually eat more of them, get more calories from them in you. So that was one point. The second point was new emerging research with microbiome, and that every different food has different kinds of fibers. And if you're sticking to like eating only fruits, hey, fruits are great. I'm not going to say fruits are bad. They have certain nutrients, certain vitamins, minerals, and phytochemicals, and certain kinds of fiber. But if you start eating beans, they have different kinds of fiber, or tuberous root vegetables like purple sweet potatoes, different kinds of fiber and resistant starches that are not in fruit. And I'm eating more for just me. I'm eating for all my microbiome, all my bacteria in me. I'm feeding them, because a lot of the food I eat doesn't get absorbed by me. It goes down, and then my microbiome eats it. And they are making secondary metabolites, right? And so after I did my microbiome testing and saw that, hey, my microbiome is really, a lot healthier than a standard American eater, and I don't have any digestive issues that I'm aware of, and it was pretty good. If I never did a microbiome test, I wouldn't see that I'm maybe not where I would like to be as somebody who had some immune system challenges, because our immune system is largely our microbiome is a big part of it, makes up a big part of it. So I'm like, how can I make my microbiome better? Well, I could get a wider diversity of foods, feed them different nutrients and different kinds of prebiotic fibers. And then I think the third reason was mainly for the different kinds of specific nutrients or phytonutrients in the food. So like for a long time, I rarely ever ate mushrooms. They say you shouldn't eat mushrooms raw, though you can eat some mushrooms raw if you're not eating too much of them. And there's chitin fiber in mushrooms that could help feed our microbiome. So like, and then plus there's a lot of research on mushrooms on being like anti-cancer, anti-angiogenesis. There's also lots of research on legumes, and I've never been a big legume eater. You could sprout some lentils or something like that and eat some sprouted lentils. But as a raw foodist, you're never going to eat kidney beans, because if you try to sprout them or eat them raw, they're going to kill you. So I'm able to basically now heat process small amounts of food, somewhere between 10% of my calories on a normal day, up to 20. If I'm like, oh, I'm going to binge on dates and nuts, hey, I'd rather eat some steamed vegetables instead of dates and nuts these days. Like maybe you were saying, and back then I was like, no, raw is better. And now I'm like, I'm more mellow because I've seen some of the science, some of the data, and I'm experimenting with myself. And maybe one day I'll go back to eating all raw foods. Maybe I'll think, no, this cooked stuff ain't working for me, and I'll check my microbiome. Oh, my microbiome's not changing, even if I'm eating all this stuff that's supposed to be good for you, that the science said is supposed to be good, so I can have a greater diversity. I don't know what's going to happen. Life's an experiment, man. So I want to encourage everybody to test rationally, and not just go blind and cold turkey just because some influencer or some guru that you're listening to says it.
Sure. From my experience, I went into after being raw for many, many years, 100%, I experimented with cooked foods, and I didn't feel necessarily bad on the cooked foods. And I wasn't eating junk food. I was eating similar to what you're saying, steamed vegetables and so on. But I just didn't feel as good. Like for example, my sleep, I wasn't able to sleep as much. My energy wasn't as good as was. Even my thinking was just a little bit not as sharp as it was on raw foods. And then I made the decision to go back to all raw, and been doing it now for a good amount of time, and feel better than ever. But I respect where you're at and so on. So what about that? What about what differences have you noticed after being on a raw vegan diet 100% for a long time, adding a little bit of heat processed food back into your diet? Have you seen any negative effects to it that you realize?
I mean, maybe I might be taking a few more naps and get a little bit tired a little bit earlier. I mean, maybe that's one thing. After I eat heat processed foods, I probably should take some enzymes with them, or something. But I mean, honestly, like I sleep probably better now than I did then, because actually as a raw foodist, it'd be hard for me to get to sleep. And I'm sure there's other things that's changed in my life, but maybe the heat processed foods help me sleep better. I don't know. My energy levels are still, pretty high to do whatever I need to do. I mean, but the thing is this, like, it's not like a big portion of my diet. I'm not like pigging out on raw foods. I'm still eating primarily raw with small amounts of heat processed foods. And I think everybody's a little bit different, and
Sure.
the type of cooked foods, I eat some, purple sweet potatoes or purple potatoes, but I don't eat like russet potatoes. Those are like not good for glycemic, not good for your like they're very high in sugar actually. The purple potatoes are very low, plus they have the anthocyanins that modulate things. So like I'm eating it, I think, in the most wisest way that somebody could. And I think that the inclusion of the additional phytonutrients like anthocyanins and fibers are helping me out actually.
So, from a sleep standpoint, how many hours were you sleeping back then, and how many hours do you think you need now, or do you like to get now?
I mean, back then, I mean, back in the day, man, I would get like 5 hours or 6. I'm probably up to like maybe 6 to 7, 7 to 8, depends, you know.
So you did notice a little difference, but not
But
much.
other things change too, so I can't just say it's the cooked food that did it. You know, I mean, I've done a lot of things.
Sure,
I
there are
got
many
like
variables to health.
I've made,
Absolutely.
you know, my room darker. I got like a weighted blanket. I sleep in a cooling pad, so like my body temperature drops down lower. You know, there's a lot of mouth tape. I don't have like, you know, bright lights at night. I only have red lights. I mean, so I can't say it's only the cooked food. I'm always trying to take it to the next level in all the areas of life that I can.
Sure. What about your water intake? How much water do you drink on a regular basis now? Because I know you juice a lot, so you get a lot of liquids. So do you drink water?
I do. So I drink 1 liter a day is what I drink when I'm not traveling. When I'm traveling, all this flies out the window because I gotta kind of make do with what I got. But these days I drink 1 liter of water, and if I'm thirsty during the day, then I just drink more juice. You know, I generally drink 3 to 4 quarts of juice these days. Today I've already drinking 2, and I'm feeling that I need to get that another quart in actually really soon.
So now, what type of water do you prefer to drink?
So I drink a fractionally distilled water. It's called Q-Larvia Q18 if you want to look it up specifically.
So what what kind of water is that?
Q-Larvia Q18,
Fractionally distilled. What exactly does that mean?
fractionally distilled.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what does that mean?
All right. So that means they have these big towers and they distill the water. So standard distiller just all goes in. So when you fractionally distill it, they can separate out certain different kind of parts of the water, for example. So the fraction distilled water that I drink, the reason why they're fractionally distilling it is because it has a lower deuterium content, you know, no, well, not quite, maybe 9 times lower than the deuterium content in, you know, water at the equator, for example. So it's low deuterium water, which is a whole nother level that I need to make a video on that I haven't really made a video on. I'm still, once again, in the experimental phase myself to see if it actually makes a difference.
Now, do you make this water or do you buy it?
No, I mean, I wish. I mean, I would spend like $5,000 to buy the machine to do it, but the machine costs probably a lot more. So I have to buy this water. It comes from Hungary, which is not the most sustainable thing to do in the world, but that's what I'm experimenting right now for my health.
Sure. So, and how much water did you drink back then when you were 100% raw vegan? How much water were you drinking? Same
I drink,
amount?
I would drink, well, the thing is now I've substituted the water I drink with juices. Whereas before, when I was raw vegan, I might eat some extra fruit like watermelon, or I would just drink water because I wasn't like necessarily against drinking water. But nowadays I want living structured water, not just filtered water, you know, even out of reverse osmosis or distiller that I made, you know. So that's my primary goal. I want to have water with benefits. Is what I'm trying to do. So the structured water, when I drink juices, it also comes along with a full phytonutrient, vitamin, and mineral package when I'm drinking juices. Plus, I've personally never really liked the taste of water. It just tastes like nothing or sometimes not good. And juices taste amazing to me.
Sure. I have found that cooked foods addicting, or heat processed foods addicting, especially potatoes and grains. That's for me personally, and for most people I've worked with, those are the two most addicting foods. So do you feel, now that you've included potatoes back in, do you do any grains at all?
Oh yeah. So what do you
Okay.
consider? Like I haven't done any really wheat or anything yet. I mean, I got some einkorn heirloom wheat that I want to somehow process and get into me because once again, different kinds of nutrients in there, but I do some small amounts of like purple rice. See, here's the thing, like if you're eating white potatoes or standard white rice, that's high in sugar. That sets off your brain like this is good, like it's good as bananas or whatever, right? I don't eat those things. I will only eat purple rice, purple
Oh, I
potatoes. These
understand.
things are much lower
I
in sugar.
understand. But my question is, like, do you do this every day or like once a week? Do you like miss it when you're not doing it? Like, can you go raw now, be raw vegan for a month without craving the heat stuff? Like, where do you stand with that from the I don't
Oh,
want to use the word addicting, but from that standpoint of like you've gotten
I
so used
understand.
to this.
No, I could go raw. I mean, I come visit you and I'm raw vegan. I'm not eating any heat processed stuff because I don't got my Instant Pot. So it's like, here's the thing. I don't salt my foods. I don't add things to my food. So I just taste the food alone. And, you know, this week I'm doing like cooked soybeans, cooked organic black soybeans and cooked regular soybeans. And I'm not going to tell you guys those taste better than some ripe oranges, or you have a lot of mangoes. The mangoes taste way better. So it's not like, oh yeah, these cooked soybeans with like, you know, purple rice taste super good. I'm like, this is good for my microbiome. I'm eating it. It's not like I really want to eat the whole jar because like you eat that much. And I'm like, all right, I got a taste change. This is not feeling good. Let's eat something else now, you know? So it's like I feel that, you know, I mean, after eating so long on a raw foods diet and conditioning myself, right? I don't get those cravings anymore. I just don't have the need, like, or like eating steamed okra or steamed eggplants. I mean, you eat a few of those and you're like, I'm good. Like, I don't want, it's not like I got to eat more eggplants. I mean, I have tons of eggplants. I can't even eat them fast enough because I don't want to eat them that fast. You know, for me, it's all about a balance, you know, and getting a good balance of different foods. You know, I mean, I eat potatoes and it's like, I mean, I was eating purple potatoes the other day and they're not sweet. I mean, you know, eat a diet like
Okay,
of
the
highly,
video paused for
you
a
know, sweet
second.
potatoes. And
So
actually, that's another reason why I'm eating some heat processed foods, because
can
what
you
do
hear
some of the
me?
longest lived cultures eat? They eat beans and they eat sweet potatoes. I mean, that's a good portion of what they eat. And I'm like, how many long lived raw foodists do you know? Right? Herbert Shelton, all the TC Fry, you know, I don't know.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right, we lost a little of the connection there, but we're back, everybody. So I want to discuss three more topics with you. One of them is the percentage of fruit you eat. How much, when you were doing this diet all these years, what was the most time, what was the biggest percentage of diet was fruit? And where would you say you're at now?
I mean, I'd say the biggest percentage, Paul, was like, I was like 90% back in the day, man, when I believed that fruit was the best food on the planet and we should eat lots of it. And I mean, vegetables don't have hardly any calories in there. I might eat a head or lettuce and some other random vegetables, but like I was eating a lot of fruit, especially, you know, packing in more fruit calories with some dates and stuff, you know, back in the day. And that adds your calories in there
And
quite quickly.
that was like after you were doing this for like 10 years, that's what you're talking about, right?
No, that was probably more near the beginning. I was like 90%. After I was doing this for like 10 years, I was a little bit more wiser,
All
but
right,
I
so
was still
what would you say 5 years or 6 years? That's when you were eating high fruit?
in. Yeah. So when I
So,
was a noob, well, I went through a couple of stages. So I went through more like Ann Wigmore living foods because I was more predominant. Then I got exposed to David Klein and, you know, Doug Graham and the 80-10-10 lifestyle before it was called 80-10-10, you know, like the, you know, different kind of like Fruit Lutz and things and the orchard that Dave Klein had, or that one in Katati, you know, I don't know. But so I was doing that more. And then I started just like growing my own food and getting into more vegetables. And that was probably about like 10 years in is when I really started to like see the value of the vegetables.
so how do you
But
feel about these people that are raw food on the internet now that are less than 10 years, less than 5 years promoting a raw food diet with so little experience, but still more experience than the average person? How do you feel about these people?
depends what they're promoting. I mean, I see most people that are new into raw foods at less than 10 years experience because they don't really know. They're just basically regurgitating what they heard and what they believe works, but they haven't done it for a long time. I mean, hey, I think it's great that people eat more fruit because most Americans don't eat enough fruit, but I think you need to, you know, limit the fruit. And on some level, Paul, it actually makes me sad because I just see people teaching the wrong information that are going to set people up for failure instead of success. And then we're going to have a lot more ex-vegans, a lot of people talking that raw veganism doesn't work. And yes, of course, if you do anything the wrong way, it's not going to work. And eating a high fruit diet, in my personal opinion, is not a sustainable way to live successful in a raw vegan diet if you want to do that.
And what percentage of fruit would you say you eat now?
That's a good question. So, my goal every day is to eat under like 49% of my calories from fruit. So my goal is to eat the majority of my calories from vegetables and other foods these days.
What about your fats? Like what percentage of calories are coming from fat these days, and what type of fats do you eat?
So I'll tell you, my goal for fats is 1 or 2 handfuls a day. And then I might have like a few extra nuts that I crack in my nut cracker every night when I'm watching Netflix. Maybe like, I don't know, 12 extra nuts that I crack. So, I mean, that's not very many. So it's still relatively low. Fat calories could add up quickly. I don't do any oils at present time. I've been doing a DHA oil and, just like as a supplement. And I might be getting some high polyphenol olive oil to experiment with. But I haven't done olive oil like forever, since I was like brand new into this. I haven't calculated the ratios in a long time, but basically, at this point, it might be good to eat some whole nuts. I'd rather eat some whole nuts instead of eating some dried fruit at this point, in my career and what I'm doing. But yeah, we need to, not eat too many, because I mean, the problem is when you eat too many of one thing, you're displacing something else. So like if you're eating a lot of fruit, that means you're not going to eat a lot of vegetables. You're not going to eat a lot of nuts. And maybe you won't be eating, other beans and grains, for example. So like my goal now is I want to have a pie chart and, have more equal slice just the foods that we can't. And I think that's something that a lot of raw food camps and diets don't take into consideration, because when a lot of the raw food diet styles were created, actually all of them that I could think of, the microbiome was not even discovered.
Sure. And so tell us about your experience over the years with fasting.
So I've never done a lot of fasting. I've done some juice fasts. I've done a water fast before, but I'm not like a super hardcore, I fast every day, or I fast once a month, or I fast once a year when the seasons change. I've never really done a lot of that. On random occasions, I'll do a fast or something, but I mean, I probably need to go on a fast, like doing a water fast with my next partner or something when we could support each other, or a juice fast for sure. But I mean, some days I live almost, so this is what I believe. I believe in a perpetual juice fast is like what I believe. And that's why I drink, 3 to 4 quarts of juice a day, usually in the mornings, because it's like easier on the digestion. And, so it's like, I'm not like piling in nuts and heavy foods all the time. I'm eating pretty light. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, I think fasting has a place, but I'm not like a super hardcore faster. Maybe I could be healthier maybe if I fast a little bit more,
Sure. So what's your experience been with exercise?
Yeah, exercise. I could definitely say that I could use more exercise. I mean, my exercise regime is basically getting daily activities. I mean, if we look at people in like once again, longest lived cultures, I want to try to model them, because I mean, they were getting some results. I mean, they do gardening, they do walking. They don't go to gyms in some of the longest lived cultures. They just get daily physical movement. They're not sitting on couches watching Netflix. They're tending their garden. They're walking to visit their friends. They're walking to the store. They're just doing regular stuff. Now that's what I do. I do regular activity levels, but I want to try to up that a little bit more. I like to go out on hikes. But yeah, I mean, I probably could get a little more exercise than I do. I don't lift any weights other than lifting heavy boxes when I'm like buying cases of bananas or lots of jicama and I'm carrying like 50 pounds out, or I'm like carrying 40-pound bags of worm castings and shuttling 5-gallon buckets of water in my garden to pour on my plants, because I'm catching the water when I wash stuff and then I pour that on my plants. So I mean, that's my regular physical activity, is just doing real world exercise to get my activity level, stay in shape as much as I can.
Sure. So I got 1 or 2 more questions here. And everybody, I'm going to put John's contact information below the video, all his links, his YouTube channels, and definitely contact him. If you look for a juicer, you definitely got to go to his website and check it out. So John, who have been, when you were getting into eating a healthier diet, you mentioned like Jay Cordage, who have been some of your role models back then, and who do you look at and study now or research, and like who do you appreciate now, the information that you're still learning from?
That's a good question. I mean, so back then, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot of raw food teachers that I gravitated towards. I mean, I think back in the day when I first got into it, I mean, the majority of the books that I found back in the day was like Ann Wigmore, Gabriel Cousins, and Brian Clement, which promote more of a green style based diet, which I did for many years until I got more exposed to like the natural hygiene movement. You know, and I didn't really have anybody in the natural hygiene movement that I really gravitated towards, or like, oh, their word is gospel or whatever, you know, like, I mean, there's people I listen to, and like there's like Lou Corona that I met when I was super young. He's kind of influential. Dr. Rick Dina, of course. I learned a lot of stuff from Dr. Rick Dina. I really look up to the Dr. Dinas even to this day and try to keep up to date with what they're doing and what they're teaching to people. And these days, I think it's mainly like Dr. Joel Fuhrman. I kind of keep up to date with what he's doing. And I mean, I kind of just, you know, I even look at like people doing like diets that aren't the same as mine. Like I'll look at people on a paleo or keto diet and see what components are they doing that, you know, that maybe I can implement in my plant-based diet that, you know, they're doing, because eating meats, you're not getting fiber. So, hey, they're supplementing with fiber. And hey, let's look into supplementing fiber, because maybe I'm not getting the right kinds or enough fiber from my plant-based diet as much as I'm eating a lot of plants, right? You know, they're taking different kinds of fiber supplements that most people on a vegan or even raw vegan diet won't be eating. So I'm like, So, you know, I look into like a lot of people. I don't want to say I like idolize or, you know, guru-eyes anybody. I would say Dr. Joel Fuhrman is my biggest recommendation for somebody that wants to eat healthy, a healthy plant-based diet, a solid approach. He's termed what's called a nutritarian diet, which is probably the diet style that I'm most in favor of. That being said, I do my own diet that like nobody really quantifies, and maybe one day I'll write a book about it.
Sure. On another different topic completely, a lot of people I've interviewed told me as they get healthier in life, especially after they overcome a health challenge, they develop a spiritual practice in life, or they contribute a lot of what they learned, not just to their physical story of their healing, but spiritual practice or something. So how's that been for you?
Yeah, so I mean, you, Paul, are like totally into spiritual stuff, and me, I'm probably like more on the other end of the spiritual stuff. I'd say definitely becoming and eating raw vegan and eating more towards the earth got me more connected with the earth and towards spirit, if you want to say that. I do believe in, you know, God, or I would say maybe greater, higher power in life. Other than that, you know, I like to do like daily meditations, like not like untraditional meditations. And then also I like to commune with nature. And I guess that's like my spiritual kind of journey. I'm kind of more, I don't know, type A, pragmatic. I don't know if these kinds of people could like do a lot of spiritual stuff. So I'm not like hippy dippy or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, I connect with nature and in my own way, spirit, and think about these things. Sometimes I probably should. Once again, there's a lot of area in my lives that I maybe get a little bit neglected, like could maybe do more exercise, could maybe do some more spiritual kind of work. I do some breathing exercises sometimes. But yeah, that's my extent of it. Yeah.
So John, what do you want to add to this interview that people can know about you, or just people should know about themselves and healing and the whole picture?
That's a good question, Paul. I think really what it comes down to is getting back to nature. And I mean, the world is not a natural place. I mean, you talked about this even when you were younger, you know, we live in an unnatural world. And I mean, it all comes back to getting back to nature and eating more natural foods from the planet, foods from the earth, foods that you could grow yourself, you know, fruits and vegetables, other plant foods to fill in, you know, not be too, you know, locked into one specific diet style, but be open and more flexible. Because I think, you know, the more inflexible you are, the more subject you are to, you know, maybe not having the best results. And I think things are just too, like, people look at things as good and bad, right and wrong. And, you know, sometimes there's always a gray area. So I'd encourage people to look for the gray area and not be, you know, super set in their ways. Because, you know, as for doing this for 27 years, I've seen teachings and things that I learned when I was younger as a fledgling raw foodist, and I'm like, wow, I was just really taught incorrectly, and now I live by this dogma for 10 years, and you can't take that back.
So if you can go back to your younger self in this time and go back to your younger self, what would be the number one piece of advice you'd give that younger John, let's say from like 20 years ago?
Wow, the younger John. I mean, the number one piece of advice is like eat a variety and don't try to get locked in any one particular food category, and be more aware of, so be more aware of how you process the food and how the food is grown, and do the methods that you believe will get the highest nutrients, that you believe to be important, which I would say, to me these days, it's all about the phytonutrients, and the fiber are some of the most important nutrients, and all the other nutrients and carbohydrates and fats and things are coming along for the ride. And when I got into this, and as when you did, it's all about, you got to get the carbohydrates in. It's like, that's the big focus, right? Phytonutrients and fiber are so critical to our health, and I wish I knew this a lot when I was a lot younger.
I almost forgot to ask, because I ask this to the people I interview. What's your age and how much do you weigh and what's your height?
So about 5'9" 3/4", and I haven't weighed myself lately, but I should be about 150, and I don't disclose my age online for privacy reasons.
Okay, all righty. Well, everybody, that's John Kohler. I'm going to put his contact information below the video. John, thank you for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Paul. It's fun.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show. Raw Life, brighten up your life.